and welcome to the Retro Hour, episode number 38, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
And me, Ravi Abbott.
And thank you so much for checking out the show, guys, whether you're a new listener or maybe you check out the show every single Friday. Of course, we are available on all the big platforms. We're there on YouTube every single week, on all the podcast clients, Stitcher, SoundCloud.
Yeah, iTunes as well. And I've noticed on iTunes, where are the comments, guys? Come on, we need to get some more.
When was our last comment on iTunes, a review? It was about, end of August?
Yeah, quite a while ago.
So if you do listen on iTunes every week, we really do appreciate any reviews on there. They all help get us up the charts and rank up there as well, so they're all very useful, aren't they? And this show, we do strive to bring you the best guests every week as well.
Oh, and what a guest we've got this week. We've got Mev Dink.
Now, if you're talking industry veterans, they do not come much bigger than Mev.
No, he started basically with the, ZX Spectrum?
Yeah, ZX81, I think it was his first experience with it, but we're actually going to hear from Mev in a bit. He drove to Sinclair's factory to pick up his first Spectrum.
Yeah, and he's been involved in tons of great games like the First Samurai.
Yeah, First Samurai. Last Ninja 2 he did.
Last Ninja 2, yeah, and Street Racer.
Which, to be fair, was, you're talking like, early 90s. I think that was better than Mario Kart.
Yeah. Well, I had it at home, so...
Well, we're even going to hear in a bit that apparently Nintendo were getting a few clues from him, weren't they? Coming over and examining that at CES back in 1994. And also some obscure stuff that he worked on, like the Konix Multisystem.
Yeah.
That was going to be like the big British system of the late 80s.
I remember that advert, Konix Multisystem.
It's great.
Yeah.
And obviously it never came out. And Mev was actually quite involved in, working on that system. And we're going to hear a bit more about that. And also, if you're talking about, systems that really were disastrous, if we're honest, the Commodore 64 GS.
Oh, yeah, we know you like them because you found a load of old cheap ones years ago, but yeah.
Didn't buy them, unfortunately.
No.
But yes, we're going to have Mev Dink on the Retro Hour, seriously, if you love the 8-bit days. And also we're going to hear about his plans to remake a couple of his most famous games as well. So he's going to be on in around 20 minutes from now.
Can't wait.
And we're just got to say a massive, massive thank you to this week's donators as well.
Oh, yeah, we've had some great donators. Ian Poyner.
Espen Tangen.
And Alison Chataway.
Thank you so much for your support of the show, guys. Now, every week we do mention this. We have a little tip jar, think of it as, on the front page of our website. Any donations will go into the running of the show. And, it's just great to see people supporting the Retro Hour and saying thank you for what we do. And obviously, that goes into, our hosting and our SoundCloud subscription, and which I think, we're nearly at the stage where we might not actually be paying to do the show out of our own pockets. Almost. Not quite there, but yeah.
Almost, yeah. And we're going to be able to give back to you guys as well, because we're doing a competition at the moment.
Now, we are. We mentioned this last week, didn't we? And it's for these amazing books.
Oh, yeah, they're the Commodore 64 Visual Compendium, and it's the extended edition. So it's, 400 pages of Commodore 64 beauty.
It's celebrating the visual style of the Commodore 64, the nice kind of coffee table books. And
yeah, they're hardbacks as well, and, freshly printed. The new book smell,
You've been sniffing them, have you?
Yeah.
Don't let that put you off. So if you do want to win one of these books, we've got 2 copies to give away. We set this up in the show last week. Lots of entries come through, but there is still time. If you'd like to enter, it's open until October the 1st. And all you have to do is tell us which Commodore 64 game this music is from. Wait for it.
You'll be amazed at how many people have got that wrong already.
Well, you said last week, this is the easiest thing in the world. A lot of people have got it wrong, haven't they?
Yeah, we've got 5 pages of entries as well, guys, already. And there's some wonderful comments in there. Thanks so much to everyone that's entered so far.
And there is still time. Obviously, like we said, all of the correct entries will go into a random number generator. We'll pick out 2 winners. And you can read all the rules and enter this on the front page of our website,
and we're
theretrohour.com.
going to announce it on the 40th episode, aren't we, Dan?
Yeah, we'll give a big shout on the show and obviously get those books out in the post before then as well.
Yep.
Now, let's get into this week's news. This story was pretty interesting. Obviously, Sonic the Hedgehog has got quite a distinctive soundtrack. And, the samples in that, you think you'd spot them anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
How often have you been to America?
Never been to America at all, no. I'm going to Brazil. If there's any Brazilian Amiga users in Christmas, let me know. But I've never been to America.
Actually, it was quite big, the Amiga in Brazil, I think, wasn't it? I've got a feeling.
I'm not
maybe
sure.
I made that up. I don't know.
Yeah, Sao Paulo.
Well, this story is that, and I didn't know this, and maybe we do have listeners in America. Maybe some of them can confirm this, but apparently, hearing the Sonic the Hedgehog, the sample it plays when you collect a ring.
Yeah.
Apparently, hearing that sample on cash registers, tills, is really common in North America.
That's crazy, because we just have that one tone, boop.
Yeah. Well, here, there's a little YouTube video. Have a listen to this. So this is someone scanning a bottle of vitamin water. And here's the sound the till makes.
Honestly, that is so cool.
That is Sonic the Hedgehog. And all the comments in this YouTube video are, this is real. All Shell petrol stations, Sunco gas stations, all of them in North America do that. And the reason is, there's a guy who's actually done a bit of digging here on Reddit and he's found out what happened. So the story behind it is Sega actually licensed out a few of their IPs in the early 90s to a company called Sammy, who were a Japanese company. And they made, we've talked about these before, is it the pachinko machines?
Oh, yeah.
You've talked about those, haven't you?
So
they used to make those, you see, and now it's not that popular. But they used to use apparently some of those samples in those machines, in the arcades. So now what they do instead is they kind of make just generic hardware for like North American shops, including a lot of these like cash registers. And because we've got access to these samples, they just put that in as like, a scanning sound effect. But
you would have heard that instinctively, though. If you heard that, you would have picked up a ring straight away.
But I was looking at it on Reddit and there's hundreds of comments going, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I was like, no, what? I didn't realise it was that widespread.
Well, let us know, American listeners, if you have the sonic sound on your local gas station.
I think that's awesome. I love like really obscure stories like that are just like so weird. That's like,
Yeah, that's really obscure. And there was even this thing, was it Human Traffic or one of these films? I remember where he's in the shopping centre and he's hearing the beeps and he's kind of dancing along to it.
I haven't seen that for years. I do vaguely remember this. It's a great movie that though as well, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I'm in the mood to watch it again this weekend now, I think. So if you want to check out that video, we'll stick that in the show notes at theretrohour.com. Now, we've often talked on this show about our kind of, preference for using old school monitors like CRTs and our classic systems and stuff like that, but I appreciate not everyone can. Because, they're really big and they take up a lot of room. And one of the main reasons to use them was light gun games.
Yeah, light gun games. So if you look on Hackaday, they've constantly been trying to defeat this way of playing with a light gun.
Because they don't work on LCDs normally, do they?
Yeah, they don't work because it's on the CRTs, the cathode ray tubes, it does the scan lines. Mm-hmm. And the gun basically points at the end point of the scan line. So it's reliable and it's vital to have these scan lines for it to actually work.
That's how it tracks the gun movement and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this guy's basically managed to hack it using a Wiimote stuck to the side of it to do some kind of positioning with the scan lines, and he's got a little custom board in there.
That's clever.
Yeah, and he's managed to get it working with an original NES.
Wow, okay.
Playing Duck Hunt on a modern LCD TV. So he's got this sensor bar up there at the top. He's got his SNES zapper, and then he's just literally sellotaped a Wiimote to the side and got some custom boards in there, and it's actually working. So
I love homebrew hacks like that.
yeah. He's using a Raspberry Pi and Arduino. He's got all the bits in there, but maybe this could be put into like a smaller unit or a custom gun.
Well, you'd imagine what would be good is if you kind of had like, a device that maybe plugged into the front of the NES, and then you kind of plug this into that.
Yeah,
a wire trailing to your original your light gun. That'd be awesome, though. And I think
or you could do it with the Saturn or the Dreamcast or something, because I'm sure all the light guns work on the same principle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like obviously the Wiimote. It's a good way of doing it because that does track the movement, and obviously you put that on top of your TV, so it kind of knows whereabouts you.
Well, I guess that's what he's using the Raspberry Pi for the positioning information to communicate with the Arduino, and then it does stuff with the Wiimote. It's crazy.
More people will be getting rid of CRTs now, though.
Yeah, I know, Dan.
I often wonder, when will they become rare?
When they've all exploded, there's only a few left working, I guess.
But it's like in the last decade, so many people have just got rid of them. And I know they made obviously millions and maybe even billions of them, throughout the 70s to the mid 2000s. And it's kind of at the stage now where you don't really see many of them in charity shops and stuff. I mean, 5 years ago, you'd see what was out in the street, wouldn't you?
Well, actually, one thing, I work in contemporary art and I'm an art technician, and everybody uses CRTs for displaying art. So in contemporary galleries, you'll have these massive CRTs that are like, the really expensive ones, the old Sony ones.
Or the PVM stuff.
Yeah, those ones. And they're still used a lot.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I know there is ways of kind of emulating it, but it never looks as warm to me. Maybe I'm too much of a purist.
It hasn't got that hum, has it?
Yeah, if you can't hear it from the next room being on, you hear that high-pitched squeal.
Or when you put your hand over the front, getting all that static.
Oh, I used to love that. We're getting maybe a little bit too nerdy now, aren't we? Keep CRT alive. Now, I've got to say a huge thank you to Ron, who sent us a story this week. Now, Ron is one of our US listeners, actually. And he only found the podcast recently. He dropped a little note through our website and he said he found it about a month ago. He's going through our back catalogue, loves the format, loves the interviews, which, is amazing, Ron. And he actually had an Amiga 1000 back in the 80s.
Oh, cool.
And he's looking at the Bedrooms to Billions documentary. He's watched the Amiga one that they put out recently, really enjoyed that. And he noticed that Dale Luck, who was one of the original Amiga designers, was in there.
Was he the guy that did the Boing Ball animation, wasn't he, Dale Luck?
Yeah, the original one, yeah. I think he did work on that with RJ Michael, didn't he? And he said the reason that, he kind of looked at that and he thought, Dale, he actually interviewed Dale Luck back in 1989 for a high school project that him and his friend worked on. And it was for, he said he did an Amiga documentary for our economics class that saved my butt from failing. We interviewed Dale Luck. He said, it was obviously filmed in the late 80s. He was a high school kid. It wasn't massive production values and all that as well. But he's actually uploaded it onto YouTube.
Oh, this is so cool. I'm just looking at even the effects that he's using, and it's like the old VHS fades and all of this stuff.
I think all the intro was done on the Amiga by the looks of it as well.
Yeah,
I recognise a few of those old effects as well. And he's lived in Silicon Valley for most of his life as well. And apparently he missed the 30th Amiga anniversary in Mountain View. He's only found out about it now, which is just down the road from him. But...
Oh, no. Well, I'm adding this to my favourites, so I've definitely got to have a watch of that tonight.
So if you want to get some old school Amiga goodness, an interview with Dale Luck that was, a long-lost interview, you could say, that was done back in 89.
Yeah, there's only 21 views on this one. So.
Yeah, we'll stick that in our show notes. All Amiga fans have got to watch this. It's really good work. So thank you for sending us that, Ron. We really appreciate that. And speaking of user-submitted stories, we've had a little message here from Yuan, who wanted us to cover fanzines a little bit.
Fanzines, yeah, because we were talking about Amiga format and magazines the other day. So fanzines, what are your experiences, Dan?
Well, I do read. Have you had a Commodore 3?
Yeah, I went into work and printed off like tons of colour pages of that. Yeah, nearly got in trouble.
Well, they do. They release Commodore 3 like once a month at the moment, roughly. And that I think it's up to like issue, what's it on now? 94 it's on now. So it's been going a long time, 94 months. And they put that out once a month, and it's available. What's cool about it is you can obviously read it on their website and all that kind of thing. There's a PDF, but also you can download it as a D64 file that you can actually read it on a Commodore 64.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So that's the way I generally
really
read
cool.
it, yeah, what I mean? It keeps me using my C64 at least once a month to read Commodore 3.
Because I just print it off, but once you print it, you can, staple it and everything. Mm-hmm. And then you've got, it's like a proper magazine.
Yeah.
Just made in some bloke's bedroom. It's great.
And using your printers at work.
Yeah.
Ravi, what's all the stuff you're printing out? But he's also submitted a few other interesting fanzines on here as well. I hadn't heard of a few of these, but apparently there's one called Colour Personal Computer, which is an Amstrad CPC fanzine.
Oh, nice.
It's just been released, the first one this month, and it was actually a successful Kickstarter, apparently. So there is some, obviously, interest behind them. Freeze 64, which is a very nice looking fanzine for the Commodore 64. Issue 2's out at the moment, 2 more in the pipeline as well. And also one here called 8-Bit Magazine that he suggested, which covers everything from the Amstrad, Atari, Apple, Commodore Sinclair. And that was another Kickstarter with loads of good content about different 8-bit systems. So
I love that. It's like people making them on the web and then you can physically get it or, read it in whatever medium you like. And maybe people won't be producing Amstrad magazines professionally, so they're filling the gap there very nicely.
And print them out, it means you can read them on the toilet as well, which, do it old school.
Yeah, any place.
Yeah. Using your iPad on the toilet just feels wrong, doesn't it?
Or your Commodore 64.
Yeah, CRT balance on the thing. Now, before we get into this week's interview with Mev, you did mention the Amstrad CPC there, and there is a classic game that's been ported to the CPC, a game you never thought you'd see running on the Amstrad. Pinball Dreams.
Oh, Pinball Dreams. Wicked music as well.
Oh, yeah. Was that 21st Century Entertainment did it, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I remember, that originally came out on the Amiga. I actually got it on, I've got the iOS version on my iPhone as well, which is really nice. I've got it in the Atari Jaguar. It is one of my favourite pinball games ever. But there is a little team here who are doing this. Apparently, I don't think it's quite complete yet, but they're saying that they're going to be bringing it out in October. There's a few screenshots at the moment. If you go to Indie Retro News, they've actually got some of the colour palettes and stuff like that as well. And some of the graphics look really impressive, actually. I knew the CPC had these kind of high-resolution screen modes, but actually it's really impressive what they can do with them and just how sharp they look.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. It looks like just high-end kind of high-res graphics on there.
You know what's crazy as well? You'd think that, a game like, obviously you've got to see what it looks like running and the animation and stuff like that. You'd think that would use probably more potential, system power than the Amstrad CPC had.
Yeah.
Well, the team here are saying due to their coding, and apparently this will only use 40% of the Amstrad CPC's potential processing power to run this game. So,
wow. Maybe they should have, back in the days, been releasing them.
yeah, I don't know much about the team behind it. There is a link on it. We'll put this in our show notes as well. But apparently, they're quite regular users of the CPC wiki forums. So if you want to follow the project, I mean, it's due out in a few weeks by the looks of this in October. So, the Amstrad, it's always an interesting platform. I remember my friend Graham, when I was at school, he had an Amstrad CPC with the green screen monitor.
Well, actually, when we're talking to Mev, he mentions how the Amstrad was massively popular in Europe.
Yeah.
And not actually that much in the UK, which is weird because it's like, Alan Sugar's home, which is the guy behind the Amstrad.
I think by the time it came out here, though, because it did come out after the Spectrum and the 64, I think probably they were already too, dominant. I only knew, like I said, one kid at school that had an Amstrad, but it's an interesting system.
Well, I saw in a documentary that Amstrad actually had a strategy of aiming for all the other European countries, France, Spain, and all of these ones, because they knew that the American market was full.
Apple and Commodore.
Yeah, and they knew that the British one was with Sinclair, but all these other regions weren't getting addressed. So sneaky Alan Sugar sent his machines out there.
That's why he's on The Apprentice.
Yeah.
That kind of business sense. So if you want to find out more about that, it will, of course, go in our show notes at theretrohour.com. And that's it for our news stories this week. Thank you so much for checking out episode number 38 of The Retro Hour. The show will be out again next Friday, as always, available from all your favourite podcast clients. Get the iTunes review in there as well. And, of course, do enter that competition on the website to win a copy of the Commodore 64 Visual Compendium. Right, here we are. This week's special guest, Mr. Mev Dink.
Oh, of Last Ninja and Street Racer fame.
This is going to be an interesting one, isn't it? For the 8-bit heads, definitely hang around. Here he is on the Retro Hour for the next 40 minutes. And we'll catch you next Friday.
Ciao.
You're listening to the Retro Hour podcast, and it is our absolute pleasure to welcome this week's special guest. Thank you for coming on the show, Mev Dink.
No problem, pleasure.
So, Mev, we thought it would be really nice just to start your story, right from day one. What was it that first got you into computers, and where did it all begin?
Oh my God. How long do we have?
We can edit it.
Yeah, I'm sure you will have to. Well, to be honest, I go way back to 1983. That's when I used to live in Southampton. And at the time, I was working at a cables factory. Mm-hmm. Anyway, while I was working at this factory, I became very good friends with one of the quality control engineers there, who had the ZX81 at the time. He used to go on about computers and things, and I had absolutely no interest whatsoever. Anyway, one day he just told me that there was this new amazing computer coming out called ZX Spectrum, and he insisted that I put my name down for it. So he convinced me, and we had to wait for about 3 months. It was like, when people wait for the new super consoles nowadays.
Those guys that queue up outside for iPhones at like 3 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't have to queue up, but we had to wait for about 3 months. And then he was so overjoyed about the whole thing. We ended up driving to the actual factory, Sinclair factory, to pick up our Spectrums.
Did you see Mr. Clive Sinclair at all?
No, of course not. We just, went to the reception, picked up our computers and left because, he was so keen to get back home and start fiddling with it, I guess.
Well, you said when you first heard about his ZX81, you had no interest. So what was it that actually got you interested enough to go for a Spectrum then?
Well, to be honest, I mean, he really made me buy the Spectrum. And at that point, I still had no interest in either computing or gaming. I didn't play games at all. Anyway, so we ended up getting our Spectrums. I left mine lying around in a corner, in the house for weeks, to be honest. And, he kept on about how wonderful it was. It had color and, sound as well. And he used to ask me about some games I didn't know anything about, And in the end, he realized that I hadn't actually opened the box up. So anyway, he said, look, don't be silly, at least have a look at it and whatever. So anyway, I ended up opening it up, and this little thing, with a power supply and a little instruction book, nothing else. And then suddenly I realized I needed more bits and pieces to get it working. Like I needed a TV. And I said, sod this, So again, I sort of put it to one side and I forgot about it for another week or two. And he actually came round to my house with a 14-inch TV. So he helped me set it all up. And then he told me that I also needed a cassette player to load the games in, which I thought was hilarious.
It all sounded like a lot of effort to you then, I imagine, at this point.
Well, a lot of effort. And also, like I said, because I had no interest in it, I wasn't excited about it at all. So he was like pushing me all the time. And in the end, I had it all set up and I started reading up the book that came with the computer. And of course, having come from Turkey, English wasn't my native language, and I was still learning it. Mm. And of course, I had difficulty understanding all the information in the book. So it took me ages to get things going, just typing stuff in and seeing it on the screen, and it was just amazing. So it was just a start of a massive journey, to be honest.
So it was really learning to code that captivated you and got you interested in the machine.
Yeah, but once I realized it was such a fascinating world, and it was obvious that I needed something to really get my teeth into. I wasn't happy, of course, working at a factory, having graduated from university, and of course somehow ended up in England. But I hadn't intended in working in a factory.
Where were you getting your codes from at the time?
Well, there was this amazing magazine called Popular Computing Weekly. To me, it's still probably the best magazine ever. For people who who were interested in learning to program. So it was a weekly magazine, so we didn't have to wait for a long time, to sort of get the new issues. And a lot of the time, we used to type in this code, the codes from the listings in the magazine, and most of them wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And the number of times I had to retype, I lost count. It was so frustrating and annoying, I nearly broke the computer several times.
That's how you learn, though, isn't it? By going through and looking what you did wrong and...
No, but it's not what I did wrong. It was just like, because there was a lot of typos in the listings. And I don't know if you know anything about the thermal printer Spectrum had.
Was that the really small one? It was like a till roll that came out. I remember that.
Obviously, they used to maybe print out, using that thermal printer and somehow get it into the magazine. Or maybe they typed it in and, of course, made mistakes.
You had to wait a week until they fixed it, didn't you?
Yeah, of course, we had to wait for the following week, where they said, oh, sorry, there were some typos and here's the correct version. Anyway, it took me a month and months to get a few things up and running. So it was just amazing. I thought, what an interesting world, So that's what really got me interested in the industry. By this time, I was still not interested in playing games because, I'd never played any games before. So I was just interested in finding out how the whole thing worked and if I could, sort of program it myself and do my own little things, So I started fiddling with the code that I typed in. So I started changing it a bit,
So when did it get to the stage when you were kind of at the level where you could start, putting together your own software and like releasing it out there to other people?
Of course, it was such a long process. It took me about 2 years. Self-taught, the whole computer, the Spectrum. I mean, I learned it inside out. I was so good at it. I knew the Spectrum so well. And then, of course, another interesting thing was that in one of the issues of Popular Computing Weekly, there was this guy who used to write about machine code, as a language. And he had a small corner, obviously everyone was using BASIC at the time. And in one of his articles, he said, if you want to become a really good programmer, you need to learn machine code. Forget about BASIC, it's too slow. without even knowing the difference between the two, I said, okay, then I will learn machine code. So that's what I did.
You've just spent 2 years learning BASIC and now you've got to start over.
No. I mean, from day one.
Yeah.
So I completely ignored BASIC and I learned machine code from day one. So it took me 2 years to learn to program in machine code and, of course, the Spectrum inside out.
And even like coding on the Spectrum, I mean, when you had those little rubber keys and stuff like that, I mean, it's crazy to think how much time we used to spend with those little machines and how difficult they actually were to like work on, really.
But to be honest, I mean, I didn't have anything to compare it with.
Yeah.
That's what it was, and we just accepted it. I didn't even know it was limited. I compared it with my iPhone 6. It's just ridiculous. The difference is just outrageous. But it was amazing. So at the end of the sort of 2 year period where I felt, now I know this machine so well, I could actually write my own games. And again, I must underline this. I played very few games by then. But suddenly I sort of felt I could write my own games. And then I decided to write my first game. And of course, I decided to actually leave the factory. I sort of decided to quit, which was even more amazing. I was taking such a risk. And then I started working like full time on my first game, which was Jerry the Germ.
Well, around this time, I mean, were you kind of aware of the industry in the UK? 'Cause, I mean, obviously we had like, Imagine Software and Ocean and that you'd see documentaries on TV and, there's all these like kids that were suddenly becoming like million and billionaires. Were you kind of aware of all this going on?
But to be honest, then at the time, we didn't have any millionaires. Maybe one or two publishers, they made good money. But a lot of games were bought by publishers for like £1,000 or £2,000, which I found later on, once I got involved in it. I knew about Imagine, because I loved their game Arcadia. Even though I didn't play games, it was one of my favorite games. I really liked what they did, It was such a quality game, both technically and visually on the Spectrum. And then I went to one computer show up in London. I think it was in Earl's Court or somewhere, like really primitive fair. It was like a, little market. That's when I met Tony Rainbird of Farbird, Telecomsoft. And I showed him my demo. I'd done a very good demo on the Spectrum, which was like a graphics editor, sprite editor and animator of all things. It was unreal, So you could actually make your own sprites and animate them. And I actually tested it on my wife. She didn't know anything about computers, but she could actually, create really nice sprites because she was really good at drawing. And I thought, well, if someone who doesn't know anything about computers can pick up what I've done and learn it so quickly, means I'm doing something right.
So you were creating development tools as well as software?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was my first professional work, really. And Tony Rainbird was so impressed with it. And he said, well, this looks really professional. Well done, he said. If you decide to do a game, please let me know. So that gave me a lot of encouragement. When I decided to leave and do my first game, which was Jerry the Germ.
Jerry the Germ had a very kind of C64 Spectrum-y feel with the storyline. Jerry failed to get his stinkploma, so he's going around and infecting humans until he deserves one. It's kind of that comical vibe. Was that a deliberate thing?
Yeah, because it was my first game, I felt I had to do something different and unique. I was very confident about the programming side. I knew that technically it would be good because of what Tony said and what anyone else around me, who saw what I was doing, encouraged me, of course, in terms of programming. But, of course, in terms of ideas and originality and all that, because I didn't even play any games, it was just a natural thinking on my part, that I should do something very different and also a little bit controversial maybe, to get attention So I thought all the games that I looked at, I saw you had a hero, beating up baddies or killing baddies, whatever. I thought maybe I could do something completely different. I could have a germ, and then you have to help it to destroy the human body. So it was quite controversial, I guess.
I imagine it was the first game of its kind. I've never heard of another one like that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it was like I remember. I think I took it to Microsoft as well, and then they literally threw me out of the office. They said, "You must be joking. We cannot publish something like this. We are a reputable company." I thought I was so disappointed. But Tony loved the idea. That's the difference. He was a lot younger. He was such a young, sort of managing director of the company, and he also liked what I did, and he signed it up. And it took me 8 months to finish the Spectrum and Amstrad versions, because Amstrad CPC came out soon after I started. So it was like very similar to Spectrum. It was the same processor. So it didn't take me long to learn it. So I could do, like 2 formats at the same time. I was like halfway through, and I went back to Tony and said, look, I could do the 64 version as well. I could find the 64 programmer to help me. And he said, well, that sounds great. Suddenly I was doing 3 formats in 1985.
That's great, because you kept with that kind of free format formula.
Yeah, indeed, yes, absolutely. So I had a brilliant start. And by the way, I've just remembered, Tim Boone, a local guy, young guy at that time, of course, he did the graphics for me, and he went on to become one of the editors of CNVG. I don't know if you remember his name.
The magazine, yeah.
Yeah. So he did my graphics.
Well, some of the graphics were outstanding. So
well, yeah, when you think about the time, it's quite nice. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the isometric games, particularly with the smooth scrolling.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, I had a fantastic start. I mean, it was a very difficult game. I mean, of course, not playing games, I didn't know what was difficult, what was easy, you see. And I couldn't even play myself and judge whether it was easy or difficult. so it was a very tough game. And of course, the magazines really marked it down because of that. But technically, they gave it very high marks, which was very pleasing. And also graphically, So, it wasn't a huge success as such, but it gave me a lot of confidence. So I learned a lot from my first game. And also I was very lucky to have, of course, Telecom publish it, because they gave me such a good, fair contract, because I knew that a lot of programmers were not getting a lot of money. So I had a very good start. Then with my second game, as I was finishing Jerry the Germ, I had this idea about doing something even more spectacular, more ambitious, because I was so confident technically. And all the sort of technical feedback I got on Jerry the Germ sort of encouraged me even more. And I ended up doing Prodigy, like the first ever 3D isometric scrolling game, which was quite impressive, to be honest. Of course, I forgot to mention that I was involved in the famous 3D Ant-Attack conversion to 64.
Yeah, which looks astonishing for the Commodore 64.
So, I had met Rod Cousins, who was the managing director of Electric Dreams, which was owned by Activision. And then they were based in Southampton. So when I decided to do Prodigy, Rod Cousins, he wanted to publish Prodigy because, he was very impressed with the help I gave on 3D Ant-Attack. And of course, Telecomsoft wanted it too, which was amazing. I thought, wow, this is my second game, and so I have 2 publishers fighting for me. So it was a great feeling.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago about the magazines as well. I mean, at the time, obviously this was like pre-internet and all that as well. Did you pay a lot of attention to the magazine scores then, and did they kind of, affect you personally then?
Of course. I mean, magazines were even more important in those days because there were only a few, only a handful of magazines. So everybody bought them and everybody read them, including the developers. So, I'm sure it was very important for the gamers what the magazine said, and it was also important for us. So, yeah, definitely.
Was it quite a nervous wait, waiting for the issue to come out then with your review in there?
Oh, of course, yes. God, it was, of course. And of course, the magazines, they could be really harsh, Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, of course, the whole thing was so new. We were all sort of learning it together. I always had a very good relationship with the press. From very early on, I realized the importance of the press.
Well, a big license that you got was Nightmare, which was a British TV show that we both used to love as kids, watching that.
Well, that was amazing. Yeah, it's such a groundbreaking, TV show. So, like just before Nightmare, I also did a game called Enduro Racer. For some reason, the original Spectrum programmers didn't want to do the Amstrad version. I still don't know why, but I ended up doing it. I actually emulated the Spectrum on the Amstrad because Amstrad was a little bit more powerful in terms of processing, and it had more memory. So I had this clever idea of literally using almost all of the Spectrum code. And I ended up doing the conversion in 3 weeks, and Activision were just gobsmacked, They needed it for Christmas, and so of course they managed to release it on time, and they gave me really good money for doing such a good job. Of course, I was one of the top programmers for Activision to work with, So they always offered me their top titles. So they offered me Nightmare, and I thought, well, this is a great game to do. I always wanted to do my own games, but because of my relationship with Activision and Rod Cousins, they always gave me like really enticing good titles that I had difficulty refusing,
Well, did you watch Nightmare on TV as well? You were aware of the show before?
No, yeah, of course I watched it, and my good friend John Dean designed the computer version actually, so that I also helped. But of course we couldn't, replicate the TV show. It was just amazing, well ahead of its time, to be honest. So it was a very clever design, really. We had some nice ideas and things, and yeah, I'm very pleased with the results, to be honest.
I always feel like Nightmare is one of those kind of games that they could revisit now, because computers today could do it justice, couldn't they?
Oh, God, yeah. Now you could do a fantastic job. Another good example is actually one of my own, Time Machine. We had such a difficult time doing it on the Amiga, but now it would be so easy, and I'm so tempted to do it maybe in the future, hopefully.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I will remake it, definitely. It's such a great idea and perfect for today's technology, to be honest. And then, of course, after Nightmare, after having done all these good work, in short time, and I was making a name for myself, and then I was offered Last Ninja.
Yeah.
Again, by that time, I said, look, come on, guys, I want to do my own games, I don't want to sort of keep, rescuing your failed, projects. And Last Ninja 1, of course, was a huge hit on the 64. And, including me, everyone was so amazed by it, It was such a fantastic game. But Spectrum version never came out. It was delayed all the time and whatever. And then they asked me to help with it. And I said, no, I can't help because, I wasn't impressed with what I'd seen. It had nothing to do with the original 64 version. It was too far away from it. It wasn't doing it justice. So I said, I don't want to get involved with this at all. But they kept insisting on it. And then I heard that System 3 was about to start developing Last Ninja 2. So I made a counter offer. I said, look, I'm not interested in Last Ninja 1, but I would be very keen to work on Last Ninja 2 from day one, along with the 64 version, hopefully contributing to the design as well, And I could do Spectrum and Amstrad versions at the same time. And Mark Cale of System 3 said, what about Last Ninja 1? We advertised it in magazines for months and everyone's waiting for it. I said, look, you could just tell them it's not good enough. It's not up to System 3 standard, and you've decided to cancel it. I said, you'd get, good credit for it. And that's what he did. He said, yeah, please, if you want to, as long as you do Last Ninja 2, I'm going to cancel Last Ninja 1. So that's what he did. And I ended up working on Last Ninja 2 from day one. And it's one of my best works, really.
It's got those beautiful isometric graphics still.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, of course, Gary Thornton did the graphics with my editors and all that. Of course, in the old days, we had to do everything ourselves, as you know. Mm-hmm. For Last Ninja 2, I had to write a level editor, graphics editor, everything. And Hugh Riley, to me, probably the best pixel artist ever, anywhere in the world.
Well, I was going to say, that Last Ninja 2, the Spectrum port of that, I mean, you look at it graphically, and obviously it hasn't got the colour palette that the Commodore 64 version has, but it's still really smooth, and the animation on that is stunning for the Spectrum.
Apart from the colour,
yeah,
in some ways, it was even smoother than 64. It was faster in some ways, because I could do amazing things on the Spectrum, some things that cannot be done, on the 64. Of course, it had hardware sprites, which was a great plus for the 64, but making up the levels, backgrounds was very difficult on the 64. And if you can remember, it was drawing it up, slowly. Yeah. It was building the level up. And everyone thought, well, what a clever way to do it. But of course, John Tweedy, he did it on purpose, because he couldn't do it any faster. But on the Spectrum, I could do it almost instantly. And I said to John, I said, look, I don't want to make you look bad. So I'm going to do nice, fancy, fading in and out between the screens. And that's what I did.
I remember around that time, being at school, and obviously you worked on both machines, but I remember there was quite a big Commodore 64 and Spectrum rivalry at my school. Did you ever fall down on one side? Which one did you prefer then, or were you kind of split between them?
To be honest, that rivalry still goes on today, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is nice. It's fantastic in the retro gaming community. And of course, my stance as a professional developer, I love both machines, although I learned everything about programming and gaming and things on the Spectrum. So it has a special place, in my heart. But I love both machines. They both have strengths and weaknesses. But they were both amazing machines and instrumental, in sort of moving the gaming forward.
What did you think the first time you saw a Commodore Amiga?
Oh, now, of course, Amiga was, like a game changer, I reckon. But I actually attended Amiga 30 UK last year in August. And I said it there, and I'd like to repeat it here. Of course, Amiga was such a great machine, but it was never intended as a gaming machine. Commodore business machines, they actually, released it as a business machine, and a lot of people, a lot of magazine publishers, or people who were interested in music, whatever, that's what they were using it for. But especially in the UK, like companies like Psygnosis, Vivid Image, games, I should mention games maybe, like Shadow of the Beast, First Samurai, again, one of ours, Turrican 2, and Bitmap games, Bitmap Brothers games like Speedball, Gods. Those games really made Amiga what it is, a great gaming machine.
Well, was this the period that you decided to found Vivid Image?
Well, actually, yes, we found Vivid Image in 1988 when I met John Tweedy and Hugh Riley, of course, while working on Last Ninja 2. I had made it absolutely clear from day one to Mark Cale, the boss of System 3. I said, look, I'm going to do this and then move on, do my own things, because that's what I enjoy doing the most. But I'm doing this because this is such a great, title, and it will cement my reputation in the, games programming development. And then, of course, I also shared my wish to, go back to doing my own games with John Tweedy and Hugh Riley too. And of course, we became such close friends. I actually moved up to Watford, and John Tweedy and I shared a house together. So we worked together and things. I mean, we made such a great team, to be honest. So the three of us were doing 3 versions, and we were working together, helping each other, So I said, look, I'm thinking of setting up my own company. And they loved the idea, and they said, yeah, they would be on. So we decided to set up Vivid Image after finishing Last Ninja 2.
Well, I know when you were at Vivid, one of the things that you did work on that was about a year later, about 1990-ish, I imagine, that was the development for the Commodore 64 game system, the cartridge-only system that came out.
Indeed.
How did that come about then?
Well, of course, I mean, as Vivid Image, we had a very good relationship with Commodore because, of course, we did Hammer Fist. That was our first game. I wasn't 100% happy with Hammer Fist, even though technically it was absolutely amazing. It really made good use of the Amiga, both technically and visually. Hugh Riley did amazing, things with the graphics and things. But when you compare it to Last Ninja 2, what we'd done on the 64, I wanted something more impressive. But it looked like a console game. That's why a lot of people said, which was nice. And at that point, Amiga, of course, was like very strong, but Commodore were also talking about turning Commodore 64 into a console. And we were very close with them, and, we got involved in, helping them out. And we did the development system for it. And all the games that were put on the, 64 GS cartridge, went through our system, our development system.
What did you think of the idea of turning the Commodore 64 into a console then? I mean, it was quite late in the Commodore 64's life that they did that, wasn't it? Like you said, 1991. It was...
Well, I mean, the idea was good, to be honest. That's why we were involved, But believe me, at the time, and I said this several times elsewhere in my interviews, unfortunately, everybody jumped on the bandwagon and just redid what they had on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to sort of for quick cash. And then Commodore didn't mind it that much either. They should have really invested in original games, which really took advantage of the fast loading. Obviously, the cartridge brought fast loading, which was very important. But unfortunately, nobody really did anything original,
I do remember famously some games were released on it, and you put the cartridge in it and say, like, press 1 to start the game, and obviously it had no keyboard.
Exactly, right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
shovelware.
Yeah. It's such a shame, really. It was a good idea, but a little bit too late, and also not enough support in terms of doing original specific games for it.
Do you know what's crazy, though? Have you seen how much they sell for now?
I've no idea, to be honest.
They go for about £500 on eBay.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
I should have kept mine.
I remember my local Tandy was selling them for about £20 each back in about 94, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable, yeah.
Should have stuck up.
Yeah, we sold about 15 or 20 development systems, which was very nice,
Yeah.
We made quite a bit of money out of it.
You always seem to have very high quality of games with Vivid Image. Were you aiming to get that kind of arcade replica style or games console style?
Well, of course, we were also involved with Konix. Do you know Konix Multisystem?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Konix, yeah.
Famously never came out, did it? Got closer, didn't
It's
it?
such a shame. Again, really sad story, to be honest. It could have been the console of Europe. But we were very much involved in it. We were one of the early developers, and I was very much involved in it. And my good friend John Dean was coordinating it all. And I actually personally coded the Hammer Fist. And I was like racing with competing, I should say, with the Amiga version. And then my version was better, which was quite nice. We were very much involved with the sort of design as well. Like we encouraged them to put more RAM in it. It was 128K RAM. They made it into 256K. And then we asked them to put hardware mirroring and flipping and all that, to make good use of the memory and things like that. So we were very much involved with it. And I'd almost finished the game, to be honest. And Hammer Fist was heavily used in almost all the promotional demos.
I remember seeing the videos and stuff, yeah. And then
I
was excited for it coming out, then it just never happened.
Oh, God, I was so disappointed. I mean, I spent almost eight months coding it. And it's sad, really, it was a good machine. But unfortunately, the guy who designed it just couldn't agree with any of the people who were interested in investing money in it, including Amstrad and IBM.
Well, if you have one of those lying about.
The funny thing is, when I went back to Turkey at the end of 2000 to start the gaming sector there, unfortunately, I lost everything, including my original Spectrum, which is really, really sad.
No, nightmare.
And of course, all my, 64, GS and Konix development system. I should have kept them all, but I lost them all, unfortunately.
Well, I know a lot of the guys from the Konix went to work on the Atari Jaguar afterwards, didn't they? That was a lot of the same thing.
And they also set up their own development houses as well. I think one of them was called ATD, really good people, attention to detail or something. They're a really good bunch of guys.
So with Vivid, were you kind of expecting your games to be hits? Because you must have had a string of hits.
Well, because I had such a great freelance professional career up to that point, with Enjoy Racer, Last Ninja 2, Nightmare. So there was a lot of expectation, of course. And also, John Tweedy, Hugh Riley, and myself, like such a formidable team in everyone's eyes, So there was a huge expectation. And also we did have very high standards, and I always, try to sort of do something special with every title that we were involved in. So First Samurai, Street Racer, so always pushing it, doing something unique. Like again, like with Street Racer, it was first ever simultaneous 4-player split-screen game on the SNES.
Did you get much reaction from Nintendo for Street Racer then?
Oh, God. I never forget when, of course, I gave the game to Ubisoft. Everybody was surprised that I did that because at the time, Virgin Interactive was the biggest publisher. Everybody expected me to give it to them, but I didn't because I thought they would be impressed with Street Racer, but I didn't know how much until it was finished, which is too late. You need full support from day one, you see, from the publisher to make something really big in terms of, hyping it, marketing it, and everything else. So Ubisoft, I had a brief relationship with them when I did the PC version of First Samurai. Well, of course, when Microsoft went down in 1991, almost 1 week after First Samurai came out, we couldn't sell any more copies because Microsoft went into receivership. And I had this amazing game, in my hand, Game of the Year, but I wasn't making any money. Along Vivid Image, Sensible Software, and Bitmap Brothers, we were all in really big trouble. We could all go under, because of Microsoft. And then I had to save the company, and I had this idea of doing the Amiga version on the PC. And that was my first attempt at coding on the PC. It took me 3 months, I worked day and night and I actually converted the Amiga version. Of course, Amiga was a 68,000 processor, and PC 8086, which is completely different. So I had to do an almost line-by-line conversion from the Amiga to PC. It was really crazy. It took me 3 months. Ubisoft published that, and they were really impressed that I managed to do that in 3 months.
I was going to say it's on a lot of platforms, you know, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Saturn, PlayStation.
Later on. And then, of course, that's, really helped me save the company, to be honest. So I had that relationship with Ubisoft. They're really impressed. And I mean, most publishers, really liked Vivid Image, our professionalism and the way we conducted our business and things. So everybody wanted to work with us, which is luxury to have, to be honest. Anyway, so I knew Ubisoft were very keen to become a publisher. And I decided to give Street Racer to Ubisoft. And at the time, they only had Street Racer and Rayman. So I thought they would put everything behind those two games, which they did, to be honest. So we launched the game for the first time in Chicago in 1994, like CES. Like that was the first important CES, really. And Ubisoft did an amazing job. They had this fantastic stand. And like I said, it was their showcase title. They didn't have anything else. They put everything behind it. And suddenly, everyone was talking about Street Racer. And then, of course, Nintendo, who were right opposite Ubisoft, they heard about Street Racer. And of course, they had Mario Kart. I could see these Nintendo people in suits, coming over with their notepads, taking down notes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, looking at this huge video wall, split screen, 4 people playing. They couldn't believe it. Of course, I was like cleverly sort of standing behind them and listening into their conversation. And they were asking the Ubisoft staff about the game. And the Ubisoft guy was telling them, it's only 8 megabit. They asked the size of the cartridge. And they said, wow, they couldn't believe it, 8 megabit, because Donkey Kong Country was 32.
Wow, okay.
It was crazy, 4-player split screen. They said DSP chip, because Mario Kart used the DSP chip, which helped with the maths. Nintendo cleverly had this facility to add DSP chip on the cartridge, which made the cartridge more powerful. So you could do more with the hardware. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I believe Mario Kart was 30 frames a second. So we had the game already running in 60 frames a second in 2-player mode without the DSP chip. And then we realized we could do 4-player. And this Chris West, he was an amazing programmer. So he turned up one day with 4-player split screen, all running in 60 frames a second.
Nobody had seen that before.
Never. It was unbelievable. Of course, we went on to do 8-player versions on the next-gen consoles, Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1.
Moving on to today, Mev,
Sure.
I've heard that you're up to, you got plans to remake Street Racer and First Samurai. Is that correct?
That's correct indeed. Now, of course, at the end of 2000, I decided to go back to Turkey, to my native country, because there was no game development to speak of at the time. People knew me, but Mev Dink, because my full name is Mevlut. So though I spent the next 13, 14 years in Turkey, I started from scratch, a new studio, new team, everything else. So now there's a huge gaming sector in Turkey, especially the mobile gaming is massive there, with 25 million gamers. So anyway, I quit in 2013 because I sold my company to Türk Telekom. It's like the British Telecom of Turkey. And then I decided to move back to the UK, to contact some of my old team members to see if we could set up a small studio, like a startup. I really enjoy challenges, I used to get a lot of inquiries about my, of course, old games, including First Samurai and Street Racer. So for a long time, I've been thinking about remaking them anyway. So now I'm in the process of setting up a new studio and remaking both Street Racer and First Samurai.
So is it just right at the beginning then? Has any work started on it yet then? Or?
Well, we are like getting ready for Kickstarter, getting some materials ready for Kickstarter. I haven't announced it officially because, I still haven't set up the company, but I'm hoping to do that very, very soon. So hopefully I will first officially announce the new studio and then announce the first title that will go up on Kickstarter campaign.
Which way round are you going to do them then? Do you know yet?
It looks like First Samurai will be first,
Cool.
as the name suggests.
Yeah, it'd be rude not to, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so, and it's the correct order anyway. It's like Samurai and then Street Racer. So.
Oh, well, Mev, we're really excited to, obviously see First Samurai and Street Racer come back as well. You'll have to let us know when the Kickstarter's up and we'll give it a mention on the show.
God, I will, yeah, because I will ask you to, of course, support me because I really need everyone's support,
Absolutely, it'll be our pleasure.
It's absolutely brilliant that, you do all this work. A lot of people ask me why I'm so readily, giving interviews and, things like that. And it's you guys, who are doing us a big favor by keeping our memories alive. What you're doing, this retro gaming community is an amazing thing. When you consider, like, First Samurai came out 25 years ago, and now I'm remaking it because I'm feeling all this vibe about it, from the retro community. And also, I'm sure a lot of new gamers will be impressed with what we will do.
There's not many jobs you can do where, you did something 25 years ago and people still remember it and, talk about it all the time.
Exactly. So we are not like, musical bands. We don't perform our work. We don't go on a stage and, do our work. So we just create it and then just put it out, on the market and hope that people will like it and play it for as long as possible.
And if people want to keep in touch with you, Mev, where can they find you on Twitter, Facebook? You on those?
Oh yeah, I am indeed. Yes, I'm very active too. On Twitter, Meb Dink.
Thank you so much for coming on this week, Mev. It's been amazing talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you and keep up the good work.